What's going on, boxing fans? Super Kid Frosty here. Just got done watching some highlight vids of Pacquiao Marquez, and I'm just gonna do my prediction now. I was gonna do it Friday, but it's 1 a.m. here. I'm a nocturnal guy. Might as well get it out of the way. Um, so first off, I'll go through a little run through of all three fights and what I think the outcomes were and some special attributes I saw in all three fights. First fight, I had Pacquiao winning that fight by 1 round, 115-114, very close. Obviously, really came down to that first round. 3 knockdowns. It's a big score lead. But I think Marquez came back, dominated the middle rounds, but I still had him up 1 round, so I did give Pacquiao that fight. And as much significance these first couple fights were in the history of the trilogy, I don't think the first and second fight determine what we see on Saturday. These were different fighters then. I mean, this is a different Pacquiao and a different Marquez then. These guys were, featherweights and lightweights. So they developed in different ways. But I still want to kind of go over some little attributes I saw in both fights that you could maybe keep in mind for this fourth upcoming fight. Obviously, Pacquiao landing the straight left hand early on in that first fight. Bloody Marquez's nose. He had trouble breathing, gulping a lot of blood down. But he was just landing that straight left with ease. Midway through the fight, Marquez kind of figured it out, countered his left hand with the right hand, and threw Pacquiao off for quite a bit. And Pacquiao was a one-punch kind of fighter back then. Hadn't developed his right hand at all. Really was determined by that left. That most of his fights determined by that strong left hand. But I had Pacquiao winning that fight just by a smidge there. It could be really a throw-up thing, but I just thought that those early rounds really mattered, especially that first round. Second fight, looking at my notes here, I think Marquez did some early body work that kind of threw Pacquiao off for a hunch there. He stopped his ebb and flow, I would say. Pacquiao likes to shoot in and out with the right jab and then shoot the left hand and then work his way out, work the angles a little bit. I think Marquez was trying to slow him down a bit by hitting that body, kind of confused him a bit, which worked. And then, of course, we had a knockdown by Pacquiao with a straight left hand. Marquez getting up, of course, and I did have that fight for Marquez, though. I thought after that knockdown, regardless of it, I thought he had the stronger, more flush punches. He was shooting that right hand, catching Pacquiao much more in the combination range, and just being a smart, overly confident, aggressive counterpuncher. He was matching Pacquiao's speed and hand power. Obviously that's hard to do, but he was sticking it in there with him. Both guys had nasty cuts at the end of the fight. So I mean, there was some pretty good action in that fight. I just thought Marquez landed the more flush punches, and I gave him the second fight. I gave him a close decision, but I did give him that fight. But you saw some pretty crazy stuff from Pacquiao as well. One thing I saw was a crazy head dip. Marquez shot the left hand. I can't remember which round. Shot the left hand. Pacquiao ducks underneath and shoots his left hand right in Marquez's nose. Check it out on some of the highlight reels if you can. Just crazy skill, counterpunching skill, but still gave that one to Marquez. For the third fight, much different tone, much different scenario. Two fighters that developed in different ways coming up from that second fight. Pacquiao obviously boomed after the Marquez fights, and then after making his way up and destroying the welterweight ranks and light welterweight ranks, demolishing Ricky Hatton, beating up Miguel Cotto, things like that. So his fame and success much overbounded Marquez's. But Marquez is no worse for wear either. The guy has made a successful run, obviously at lightweight, which I think is his natural best weight he's ever boxed at and will ever box at. But he's made a good run at welterweight and light welterweight. I don't think he's as smooth and sharp at welterweight. I don't think he's as fast. And I think his last major KO was in 2006, and I don't mean TKO. I mean actual KO. Was in 2006. So his power, it's still there, but it's not as definitive as Pacquiao's. I think Pacquiao has retained his power better over the weight classes and over the years. But this fight was kind of a slower fight for me. I thought there was some good action in it, but a little bit slower. I think they were both apprehensive of each other. I think they knew their situation going into it, that they each kind of saw that on a whole the fans were kind of split on the first two fights, and they didn't really want to show that again, so they were kind of more apprehensive. They wanted to pick their punches and win by I think a percentage, not by a show. And I had that fight a draw. I thought Pacquiao won the first 2-3, Marquez won the middle rounds, and then he led off the last 3 rounds, which I didn't understand. I thought he had it in the bag at that point, but Pacquiao came on the last 3 rounds, and I think I could see how the judges could see that for Pacquiao, but if I had to lean one way or the other, probably more towards Marquez, but I still have it a draw, and I think that was my definitive measure on that, was that it was a draw. I think Marquez was effectively backing up and shooting the counters appropriately, shooting that right hand. I don't think Pacquiao was firing off his left hand enough, or his combinations enough. I don't think he was throwing enough combinations in that fight. And I think that has to do with, obviously, his training camp at the time. He was dealing with some social problems, his wife, and all that other stuff. But I also think it's part of his personality now. I don't think he's the same Pacquiao he used to be. He used to be such an aggressive, hard punching typhoon, but he's more timid now in his last couple fights. I think Margarito was the last fight I really saw him kind of really knock someone up. But I think there's so much else going on in the guy's life that he's kind of distracted. He's a congressman. He's got companies, and he's doing his own thing outside of boxing, which is great. But I really think the guy should reevaluate the importance of boxing in his life. Especially if he's going to go up against Mayweather, and especially if he's going up against Marquez. I think he needs to kind of reevaluate his priorities, and if he still loves the sport, I think he does, but, this is, I guess for him, no time to be fooling around. I think he's obviously a Hall of Famer. Marquez is a Hall of Famer, no doubt. Mexican legend, with the likes of Eric Morales and our Marco Antonio Barrera. I think he's been underrated over the years, but both awesome fighters. But for this fourth fight, I'm going to kind of base it more off the third fight. I know the first 2 fights are important, but in this respective, let's focus on the here and now, which is the welterweight Manny and the welterweight Marquez. And I'm going to go off the expectations of what they've promised to the media. The expectations of a barn burner KO fight. There's going to be a KO. And if that's the case, I'm going to give this one to Pacquiao, based solely on three things. One, I think he's got better speed and hand power than Marquez. Marquez is bulked up. I mean, I've looked at the recent videos. He's absolutely jacked, but I don't think that's going to help him. Pacquiao has better balance than Marquez does. Marquez gets knocked down a lot in a lot of fights, not just the Pacquiao fights. And I think that's from his counter-punching stance. You know, he's looking for a certain counter, and then he gets caught. You know, and Pacquiao works great on catching guys in different angles. Just watch some of his highlight vids. Some of it's just great counter-punching within an angle of another person's, you know, right hook or left hook. So I think that has a case to be made. So based on that, I think that if they're going to go gunning for it, Pacquiao will have a knockdown in the fight. And that's going to be obviously a huge score lead for him, especially when everyone's so determined on expecting a close fight, especially the judges. There's a lot of pressure on the judges. So this is going to be a huge factor in determining who wins. You know, I think Marquez will end up throwing the more cleaner punches and probably landing the higher percentage of punches. But once again, this is about much more than just percentages, as you've seen in the last couple of fights. It's about ring generalship. You know, it's about aggressiveness. It's about, you know, who's going to land the knockdown or not. Maybe it's Marquez, maybe it's Pacquiao. But from what my gut feeling about it, even if there's not a knockdown, I think it once again will go to Pacquiao, based on solely on the judging. I think there's pretty good judges. I think there's one that's been kind of controversial in the last couple fights for her. I think it's a woman, but I'm not sure on that. But you know, I don't. It's really hard for me because you know I really am split on both guys because you know I have Pacquiao winning the first fight, I have Marquez winning the second, and it's a draw for the third. So it's really up in the air. This is kind of my gut reaction. You know, it's not a great analysis of the fight overall, but it's kind of what my expectation is when they say they're gunning for it, and that they want to finish out this rivalry in fashion, which I think they should do. And I think they should leave it alone after this fight. I think they should move on to bigger and better things. Obviously love to see the Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather fight. And on top of that, for all of you guys who didn't hear already, Floyd Mayweather is fighting twice. That's right, twice in 2013. So, you know, it could happen. It could happen. I'm trying to be an optimist here, but you know it's pretty crazy for Floyd Mayweather to fight twice in a year as of recent. But that's going to be my prediction video for Pacquiao Marquez 4. And shoot me any comments you want, any analysis. I'd love to hear it. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again.